Joy Show. I'm going to straight figure that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Oh, what a day. Oh, what a day. What a week. What a weekend. What do you mean it's only Monday? Oh, my God, it's only Monday. How did this happen? There's so much to get into, and not enough time to get into it all, but we will try our hardest on Monday. I actually thought about moving today's show until tomorrow, until Tuesday, because I thought to myself, the Eagles play tonight. Who wants to go listen to a Philly sports show when there's no Eagles game to recap? And then I thought to myself, give yourself a little bit of credit. For some reason, people do tune into this show, even on the same day as an Eagles game. And so we are going to do a little bit to touch on what's going around with the Eagles, what's going on with the Eagles, what is going down with the Eagles. We are, of course, also going to find ourselves in a conversation about your team, your town, your Philadelphia Flyers, and the Sixers as well. There are no updates that I've gathered so far from the winter meetings, so Dave Dombrowski, we all wait.
We all wait with bated breath. Will Dave Dombrowski bring us a present to put under our Christmas trees?
Probably not. I actually do get a kick out of the fact that, right now, it seems like every Phillies free agent is being linked to the Mets. I find that hilarious. Oh, what was this? I'm being told the mic. We have a mic issue here. Oh, Jesus. Hold on. And now, I think it'll see. This is just the way that today has gone. It's been great. It's been awesome. Anthony is down in Florida. Anthony is apparently alive and somewhat well down in Florida. So we wish him the very best. But to this point, there is no update from Dave Dombrowski. Nary a thing going on with Dave Dombrowski. I've seen that Kyle Schwarber's name is being thrown around, being connected to the Mets and to the Reds, and oddly enough to the Pittsburgh Pirates. And there have been rumors about maybe the Red Sox being interested. And listen, I still have my theory. I still think that it's going to cost the Phillies a hell of a lot of money to bring back Kyle Schwarber. I do think that Dave Dombrowski may or may not have pissed off Schwarber and or his agent last offseason by not negotiating a contract then. But we will see. I have started to think about it, though. On one hand, I'm very worried about what this Phillies team looks like without Kyle Schwarber. And then on the other hand, I worry about what this team looks like with a 5+ year contract to Kyle Schwarber, because I'm not convinced that he's got more than 2 really good seasons left, even as a DH. Now, I could be wrong. Sam Filippo pointed out to me one day during a period at a Flyers game, well, he's got one of the fastest bats I've ever seen. I'm like, well, that is accurate. But right now, you're going to be paying him a premium coming off of a, potential MVP season or an MVP finalist kind of season. It's going to be really, really hard to get that kind of production again at any point in whatever this next contract ends up being. And then you see JT Realmuto's name has been thrown out there a lot. I saw Ranger Suarez now being linked to the Mets. It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. And I get this, and I'm going to throw the comments on the screen as well. I meant to do that already, but I did not. You get Chris Fried over here who says OPM, other people's money. And I agree with that to some extent, except, I don't know if you know this or not, but they tend to pass down some of those costs to you, the consumer, and to me, the consumer. Do I really want Phillies tickets to go up significantly? No, I really don't. I'm not a fan of them passing the costs off to me. There are also all of the additional taxes that have to get paid. And man, at some point, as a team owner, you have to look at things and say, is this the law of diminishing returns? And there's part of me that kind of wonders, if the Phillies go out and they splash Boku bucks just to retain their players, well, then all of a sudden they are off the board and they are out of the equation if a Kyle Tucker wanted to take a meeting, which there's no guarantee he would. If there's another player that really tickles your fancy, you might not be able to go have that meeting because you're so caught up in trying to retain Kyle Schwarber or trying to retain JT Realmuto or both. I'm devastated to think about Ranger Suarez pitching somewhere else, but it kind of feels like that is almost an inevitability at this point, which is a shame. Now, all of that said, we're going to try to keep it positive today. In order to keep things positive, we're going to walk away from the Phillies, and I'm going to take you into the Eagles locker room because I get it. I do understand to some extent that there are things that make you feel a little bit heebie-jeebie-ish. And the Eagles having a bunny in their locker room on the surface doesn't seem that weird until you see just how big the bunny is. Now, it's in the thumbnail of this image as well. But they've installed what they're calling a positivity rabbit into the locker room. Now, Ashlyn Sullivan, I believe, is the first one who put this out, so we're going to give her the credit. I'm 95% sure she's the one who broke the news.
But this happened last week. The Eagles brought the positivity rabbit into the locker room. And now listen, on one hand, there's part of me that says, hey, you know what? Good on the Eagles for recognizing that there's a considerable amount of negativity around the team. And it's a damn good thing to see that somebody is at least aware that maybe they need to fix things a little bit. Maybe they need to lean into the fact that things have skewed a little bit negative. Let's bring in the positivity rabbit. Who doesn't love a positivity rabbit? And then I looked at what's in the positivity rabbit's hand. First of all, I don't know if that's a microphone or if that's a cigar. It actually does look like it could be a cigar. A very fine cigar. I don't know what that is in its hand. Is it a hammer? I'm not sure. But then in its other hand is an egg. And is it okay if I just point out to the people how insensitive it is that like a week and a half ago, Kevin Patullo's house got egged. They egged the offensive coordinator's house. And about a week later, the Philadelphia Eagles put a giant-ass bunny with a massive egg in his hand in that locker room. Is somebody trolling Kevin Patullo? And will there be more eggs at the foot of that bunny? That remains to be seen. Amadeo says he thinks it's a paintbrush. What the hell sense does that make? Well, because you paint the Easter egg. It's a paintbrush? I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Now, does this feel like a locker room that's grasping at straws? I don't know. Can I remember a time when a Philadelphia team went and purchased a very large inflatable to put in the middle of their locker room to try to remind people that you might want to be a little bit more positive? I saw a theory floating out there that this might have been the Eagles' way to tell the media, hey, let's try to skew a little bit more positive around here with the questions, shall we? Let's try to be a little bit more inclusive and a little bit. It's the wrong Christian holiday. Shouldn't you have like a little manger scene? Shouldn't little baby Jesus be smiling at you as you come in and out of the locker room? Could you maybe go out and get plump old Saint Nick, pop him in there? You know, big Nick energy. Couldn't you go out and get Saint Nick, have him in the middle of the locker room? Could you go kind of psychotic and say, yo, is there a Krampus? Can we get a Krampus inflatable? And any media member who tries to stir up the shit, we're going to put them in a bag and hit them with a stick like Krampus would? I actually would be a fan of that. You can let me know in the comments who you think the media person that would end up in Krampus's bag would be. I would say it's probably somebody from the Inquirer. There are a few potential options there. But you can let me know in the comments who deserves to be in Krampus's bag the most. If you don't know who Krampus is, it's time you get on board with, Southern Germany. Yeah. Krampus is a scary looking dude with the horns. He's like the foil to Saint Nick. Saint Nick comes on the 6th and he drops the candy in the little kid's shoes. Oh, here, would you like to have some little candies? Here you go. Oh, little Johann. You've been such a good boy. Here's a little Haribo gummy bear. Would you like this? And then Krampus shows up with the horns and a bag and a stick. And he's like, you're my bad boy. Smacks him in the bag. Krampus is not to be trifled with. I actually do. There's an old appearance from The Tonight Show where Christoph Waltz hopped on with Jimmy Fallon and he explained Krampus. And I think that there is something about parenting through fear a little bit. Like if you have an ungrateful child and you say, well, listen, if you're good, you get toys. And if you're bad, you get coal. Well, where I grew up, some people heated their homes with coal, so it's actually a win-win. But in this area, coal is frowned upon. So, all right. You're either going to get toys or you're going to get a lump of coal. No kid expects to see a lump of coal. In fact, a lot of kids in the greater Philadelphia area probably haven't ever seen an actual piece of coal. So that doesn't work. So you have to parent through fear. Krampus is perfectly acceptable. Perfectly acceptable. I think that what's going to have to happen is if the Eagles were to lose to the Chargers on Monday Night Football, well, then that bunny's got to go. This happy bunny in the middle of the locker room, this thing's got to go, and Krampus has to show up instead. They'll be like, oh, do you guys remember how we had the positivity? But you've been getting in the bag. You know who didn't get in the bag, actually? Gibson. Remember Gibson? Remember the guy that the Jets didn't want to have anymore? And the Eagles are like, we're going to bring in Xavier Gibson. He's going to be great. He's going to return kicks for us. And then he decided to return a ball, and he fumbled it and kind of cost the Eagles a game, or certainly didn't help things. Well, he's gone now. They've released Gibson. So at least we hopefully will never have to watch him play in an Eagles uniform ever again. He was put into the bag and maybe taken away to the countryside, the Bavarian countryside by Krampus. So all this is happening. And listen, while the Eagles are doing this, and I'm not totally sure how to feel about it, I am trying to keep a level head. And I said last week after watching the first episode of Hard Knocks, I went, all right, I think that things in the building might be a little bit better than a lot of people were kind of fearing, and some people were kind of stoking the fire about. I'm going to take you to something that I saw that actually did make me smile. And we're going to ride this wave of positivity. DeVonta Smith over the weekend opened up about something very personal. And so we're going to try, okay? We're trying to provide you a fair and balanced look at the Philadelphia Eagles as they prepare for Monday Night Football. DeVonta Smith decided to bare his soul over the weekend. And he let you in a little bit into what's going on in his life. And so I want you to hear what is happening in the DeVonta Smith household. He has something new that has warmed the cockles of his heart. A juicer.
So what's interesting? I bought me a juicer. And I've been squeezing oranges, apples, and pineapples for the past 4 days. And let me tell you something. It's amazing. The best.
Some athletes are just like us. DeVonta Smith. All right, continue with your juicing.
This orange and apple juice I've ever had was when I squeezed my own. So, that's what I've been doing since, the Black Friday game, squeezing fruit.
What's your favorite?
The apple juice by far.
You combine anything?
No, Nick asked.
I don't know who asked that question, but that's a great question. You combining it? We got a little culinary enthusiast in the locker room.
Me there earlier, and I think I'm gonna go home and do it today. So we're gonna see how they go.
What are you gonna combine?
The orange and the apple.
Are you surprised how little juice you get on the one orange?
So honestly, the orange I get a good little bit. It's the apples. You gotta buy like 100 apples just to fill up a jar, but it's worth it.
Only 100 apples. Now listen, I think we all like DeVonta Smith anyway. DeVonta Smith to this point in his career has done absolutely nothing to catch the ire of the Philadelphia fan base. I want you to think about that for a second. There aren't that many athletes in Philadelphia that you could say, yeah, I don't think there's ever been a negative thing to say. DeVonta Smith, who we know is the Slim Reaper, this dude makes some of the toughest catches you'll ever see. He takes some of the hardest hits you'll ever see. And he pretty much always bounces right back, right? Almost never misses time. There's never been a character concern. There's never been a question about whether or not he's a decent enough human being. There have never been moments where he's like thrown his quarterback under the bus or his fellow offensive players under the bus. He just goes out there and does his job, and he seems like a nice dude. And I think it's also important to point out he was drafted in 2021. And again, it's still early-ish in his career, but to have nothing negative to say, all right, and now the man has a juicer. And you know what? Good on him. Good on him. It's a lovely thing. Now, I see Ford now calls him the Juice Reaper. I feel like we have to be able to come up with a better name than Juice Reaper. But for now, we'll take it. We will. Jim Cochran says, discovering a juicer in the year 2025, he might be the most innocent and sheltered professional athlete of all time. He seems like a good dude. He does. Oh, no. I just saw this. Chris Fried said the positivity bunny in the locker room will be sleeping with the fishes in the Schuylkill if the Eagles lose tonight. I tend to think you're probably right. Somebody's going to find that bunny if things don't go well tonight. Before we get off the Eagles, well, I guess we're going to kind of get off the Eagles here too. There's a very interesting comment over there. We're just going to skip that one. Landros Hugh says, I do not feel good about tonight. But with that said, tonight's as good as any to get this thing turned around. Go Birds. I hope you're right. I want to think that the Eagles have a legit shot of winning tonight. We'll get there in a second. I saw another question that had to do with TV, because sometimes we like to delve into the TV realm here a second. Chris goes, does Netflix getting Warner Brothers mean the end for AEW, Russ? So we have a pro wrestling question 15 minutes into the show. No, I don't think so. There are a few. Okay, let me just really quickly put my hat on here with this, because there was actually a report today that Paramount is preparing a hostile takeover bid for Warner Brothers Discovery, because they also want the linear channels and Netflix doesn't. It seems like Netflix only wants HBO Max and the IP, but they don't want the linear channels. They don't want like the TBS and TNT and those kind of channels. They just want the IP. They want like the DC stuff. They want Sopranos. They want all the HBO content. They want to have it on Netflix. They said that they would keep HBO Max as its own thing for a while at least. Who knows if any of that's true? Does that end things for AEW, the pro wrestling company? No, I don't think it does. They have a contract through 2027. Here's the thing that not a lot of people are talking about in the pro wrestling side of things, like the pro wrestling media side. So Tony Khan, who owns AEW, with his dad, Shad Khan, who owned the Jaguars and owned a bunch of other teams. They own the Jags, right? They own an NFL team. And if we're looking at the hierarchy of sports owners in the United States, NFL owners pretty much outweigh everybody, with the exception of a few owners of a few like prestigious teams in other leagues. Like I'd say, you probably would say like the Yankees are at a different level. Maybe the Lakers are at a different level. Maybe the Celtics, possibly, right? Is there a hockey owner? Is there a hockey team that you'd put in there above some NFL owners? Like I'm not sure that there is. So you really look at the NFL owners and say, the people you don't want to piss off if you're a media person are NFL owners. So the worst thing that Netflix theoretically could do is piss off an NFL owner. And you would piss off an NFL owner if you said, hey, that pro wrestling thing that you have, we're going to take the axe to it, or we're not bringing it over. And I totally get that, like TKO, who owns WWE and UFC and some other stuff, I get that there's like a massive deal between those companies as well. But I really don't think you want to get on the wrong side of an NFL owner. So I think that AEW will continue at least until 2027. And then at that point, I don't know where they go, if they spin off their own thing, if they maybe look to like move to Amazon Prime. Like, I don't know. We'll see. I'm actually more interested in what happens with the Warner Brothers stuff if Paramount's bid is successful. I think I saw today that they're offering like $108 billion or something like that to try to take over the entire portfolio of Warner Brothers, which just seems crazy to me. But then you think about the fact that like there are sports rights attached to like TBS and to TNT. So you have AEW, your pro wrestling thing, which some people are categorizing as like live sports because it's 52 weeks a year. And then others are saying it's entertainment. I don't really care which designation you give it. Doesn't matter for this argument. Then you have the NHL deal and you have some Major League Baseball. And so like there are live sports that are tied to those linear networks as well. And so part of me thinks that like ultimately Paramount is going to get this deal done. The thing that's interesting is like Netflix's offer had like a $6 billion back out clause. So like if Netflix tries to acquire the parts of Warner Brothers that they want and the government steps in and says, nay, you can't do it. Well, then there's like this $6 billion clause that can get activated and Warner Brothers can get paid $6 billion because the deal doesn't go through. I mean, that's pretty easy passive income, I guess. I'll be interested to see what happens. I think the more you see a bunch of these media conglomerates buy each other up, I mean, it's ultimately, in a lot of ways, it's bad for the consumer. I just don't know if Netflix buying the intellectual property of Warner Brothers is a good thing overall for the consumer. If you like the movie theater, and there are still people who do, well, if Netflix buys whatever they want out of Warner Brothers, in theory, it kind of kills a large segment of that movie-going audience. And now you're just talking about all the time streaming on Netflix. And listen, if they acquire Warner Brothers and they say, you know, now the price is going to go up to $35 a month or $40 a month. Well, if you have enough content to make it make sense, well, then maybe all of a sudden it does make sense. The thing that I'm interested in, though, when it comes back to those league rights, is that like as things stand, you can stream AEW and the NHL, and I think baseball and a few other sports as well that Turner has the rights to. You can stream those on the HBO Max app. So I guess the question is, if Netflix doesn't want the linear stations that also are part of those agreements, would Netflix try to integrate those league rights into the Netflix app? Would they keep them in the HBO Max app? Like, I don't know. A lot of this stuff is way too confusing. A lot of the stuff is just like way, 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 way too complicated for me. I almost miss the days of everything being nice and separate. I never thought I would miss cable. I'm starting to miss cable a little bit. If I actually think about how much money our family is probably spending on streaming right now, it is exorbitant. It's like one of those numbers that, like, my wife doesn't like thinking about spending money anyway. And if she knew how much we were spending on streaming, she'd probably be very happy, which is why I fully expect that Amadeo is going to take that little bit of what I just said, and he's going to clip that up and put it all over social media. And she's going to see it when she's scrolling TikTok. So thanks for that, Amadeo. Okay. So that's the Warner Brothers thing. I don't know. I am going to keep an eye on it, though, because I think it's interesting. JH says maybe Westworld comes back. I think they had like 2 seasons that they still wanted to do, but didn't get the green light. So that'll be interesting. Amadeo, going back to like the takeover of WCW with Shane McMahon, says Vince McMahon is going to show up on Dynamite announcing his purchase of AEW. There is a McMahon on the contract. I don't read McMahon, but it reads Vince McMahon. I can't imagine that would happen, but who knows? Let's see. Chris Freed thinks that Vince McMahon's going to be involved in a wrestling federation next year. Question is whether he starts one or buys one. I don't know who you'd buy. TNA currently has that agreement with the WWE. They just got a new deal to move their show to AMC. There are other. I mean, is Vince McMahon going to buy the NWA? No. Is he going to buy MLW? No. I don't really know I don't know if there's really a lot of value to buying a lot of these organizations, to be honest. We'll see. All right. Maybe I'll have to bring back It's Just Wrestling. Probably not, but maybe. Who knows? Let's see. Gimzak says Netflix buying is bad for the theater business. Movies will still release in the theater, but will be on Netflix much faster. I agree. There is part of me that still likes the idea of going to the movies. I do. Like, I love streaming movies. Don't get me wrong. But there is something about, like, if you go to see, like, back when like Endgame came out, like to go see some of those Marvel movies, that feels like a community viewing experience. We don't have a lot of those. COVID killed a lot of that. And so, like, I do like the idea and the option of being able to go to some of these bigger events, these bigger movies, and like still have that feeling of community that, you know, we've all gone there to the theater and people were hooting and hollering and they were losing their minds at like this twist and turn. Now, I think I've only been to the movie theater once in the last 2 years. So I'm saying this as if like I am a movie going enthusiast, and I'm not. I think it's just the idea of that being taken away is where I have an issue. Let's see. AJ says, I'd love to see how Westworld resolves. I'm trying to remember if I watched the last season. I might have. I might not have. I'm not positive. You guys could also let me know in the comments what your go-to stuff is at the movie theater. Ford here says snow caps, milk duds, and popcorn. So, all right. Let's get out of the movie stuff that I didn't mean to get to, which is totally fine. I love getting into the movie stuff. We're going to talk real quick about the Sixers, then we got to get to the Flyers, and then maybe we'll come back around to the Eagles real quick. But Sixers dropped a game against the Lakers on Sunday night. LeBron James kind of turned back the clock. LeBron had some nice shots and some nice moments in this game. He was also seen jawing with fans on the sidelines. Somebody was making fun of him for not having any hair, for going bald. And he's like, yeah, I might not have hair, but there's something else I have. And very clearly the idea was, a hell of a lot of money. So LeBron was having fun yucking it up with the fans. We'll give the guy a little bit of credit. I will say it's been pretty wild to watch LeBron this season. Virtually any time he's been asked about Luka Doncic, like, I don't know if he doesn't like Luka Doncic, but I definitely think that there's part of LeBron that feels slighted, that the Lakers went from being all in on building solely around LeBron in his twilight years to trading away Anthony Davis and bringing in a guy that they very clearly are making the franchise in Luka. And LeBron is almost like an afterthought. And for a guy who's done as much as LeBron, ego is going to kind of factor in. And it does feel like there's been a weird sort of tension. That's at least from the outside here. It's not like I'm watching every game and I'm not watching every Lakers post-game scrum. But there have been some like interesting clips that have gone around this year. Anyway, Sixers drop the game last night. They went into halftime with a 7-point lead. That third quarter dooms the Sixers again. They lose that quarter by 10 points. Things flip upside down, and Lakers even outscore the Sixers in the fourth. But there are other things that are like obviously a concern. And it's like, how do you have any kind of conversation about the Sixers without having to talk about Joel Embiid, without having to talk about Paul George. And then, of course, the typical stellar play of Tyrese Maxey. And so when we break down what happened exactly for the Sixers on Sunday night, it kind of went the way that you would expect it to. Tyrese Maxey flirted with another 30-point game. He had 28 points in this one. VJ Edgecombe had a good game from beyond the arc, 2 of 3 from downtown. He only shot 5 of 13 from the field, 15 points. Not a bad outing by the rookie. And then you look at Paul George, who only took 8 shots on the night, made 3 of them, had 12 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. And you go, all right, Paul George in 32 minutes, is that like a super impactful performance? No. Is it an acceptable one? Is he still like trying to get into game shape or whatever? Yeah. I'm not going to really complain about Paul George's game. The real problem is Joel Embiid. I hate to have to do this. I really do. I am still not in the hyperbolic phase here where I'm writing off Joel Embiid at the end of the year with my taxes. But man, it's getting hard to defend what we see out of Joel Embiid on a night in and night out basis. So Tyrese Maxey, once again, largely efficient, shoots 11 of 24 from the field, 5 of 8 from beyond the arc, tosses in an additional 9 assists and 7 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocks, just continues his superstar meteoric rise. Good on Maxey. Paul George gives you some decent minutes, okay production. Edgecombe has a good game. But you look at this giant black hole in the box score, and it's Joel Embiid. Because if you just look at the final stats, you go, all right, Joel Embiid. He had 16 points. He had 7 rebounds. He had a couple of assists, a steal, a block. He did it in 30 minutes. For a guy who's in and out of the lineup, is it really that bad? That's not the point. The point is the inefficiency. The point is physically just not looking right. But he went 4 of 21 from the field. 21 shots he attempted in this game. 21. The second most on the team behind only Tyrese Maxey. 21 shots. He made 4 of them. He chucked up 6 3-pointers. 6. Not 1, not 2, not 3. 6, which is as many as Quentin Grimes, your best guard off the bench. So Joel Embiid attempted the second most shots in only 30 minutes of gameplay. The second most shots on the team. He put up just as many 3-point attempts as your best guard off the bench, and he made 0 of those 6 attempts. I said this last week. I stand resolute in this belief. Tyrese Maxey has looked like a superstar virtually every game this season. The only time that Tyrese Maxey looks like he ever gets out of his flow is not when Paul George is in and out of the lineup. It's not when VJ Edgecombe is in or maybe out briefly of the lineup. It's not if Jared McCain is in or out of the lineup. It's all about when Joel Embiid plays. Because there's still part of Tyrese Maxey that is wired to believe Joel Embiid is the franchise player, is the highest paid player. I have to get him his shots. I have to set him up for success. 4 of 21 from the field is god-awful. Andre Drummond went 5 of 11 from the field in 18 minutes. Andre Drummond had more field goals made than Joel Embiid in about half the time. What are we doing? And so the question, I guess, it's going to continue all year. But if you're Nick Nurse, you have to figure out a way to maximize Joel Embiid's minutes whenever he feels so moved by the Holy Spirit to play. And then you also have to hope that Joel Embiid playing doesn't just fuck up everything. That's what it feels like right now. Joel Embiid is out of the lineup. This team knows what they need to do. They have a certain pace of play that they adhere to. Everybody seems to know their role. Joel Embiid hops back in the lineup, disrupts everything. Paul George gets in the lineup, attempts 8 shots. No beef with Paul George putting up 8 shots. If Paul George wants to come in and put up 12 shots a night, I'm not going to complain because I think you're going to see more of him than Joel Embiid this year. And I think his game right now fits what the Sixers do a lot better than what Joel Embiid offers you. So Paul George can come in, take 12 shots a night. I don't care. He can be out of the lineup for 2 out of 3 games. It sucks, but okay, fine. It doesn't fundamentally change how the Sixers play. Yeah, Paul George can run some ISO plays for himself. He has ways to get his own shot. He has the ability to handle the ball for you a little bit, get it out of Max's hand, get it out of Edgecombe's hand, get it out of McCain's hands. Sure, fine. but he doesn't fundamentally alter everything in a negative way. Joel Embiid comes in the lineup, and now you have to somehow create like 20 shots a night, 18 shots a night for Joel Embiid to go watch him be wildly inefficient because he can't get into a rhythm because he can't stay healthy. And I'm sorry. I know that for a long time, a nice little differentiator for Joel Embiid is that for a guy his size, he had such great touch from beyond the arc. I'm sorry. Light the three-point shot attempts on fire. 0 for 6? No. Stop that. Insane. Unconscionable. Just bad. And this is my problem, is that like coming into the season, I kept saying, if you can get Joel Embiid for 65%, 70% of the season, if you can get Paul George somewhere in that 75 to 80% of the games, in a very depleted Eastern Conference, you go, there's a path here to the Sixers being like a top 5 team. I thought that in a best case scenario, maybe you can look at a top 4, maybe a top 3 seed in the conference. But man, they are 13-10. They are a meager 7-7 at home. And their highest paid player, Joel Embiid, looks like a shell of himself. And I think the only way for him to get back to any form of the Joel Embiid the Sixers team needs him to be, he's going to have to play consistently. And I'm just not sure that the body is going to allow him to do it. He can't play back-to-backs. He doesn't seem to be able to play 2 out of every, 2 games in 3 nights. It feels like there's a new injury that pops up every few weeks. It's a shame. But man, it feels like he is closer to the end of his career than he is to like that of a competent, somewhat regular NBA player. And it's a shame because, again, here you have Tyrese Maxey, who's reaching that superstardom level. You have VJ Edgecombe, who like started white hot, kind of hit a little bit of a rookie lull, appears to have kind of bounced back a little bit. You have a guy like Dominic Barlow who makes plays every night that really makes you it makes you turn your head a little bit, right? They have guys on this team that are contributing and that are doing well and deserve the time and the minutes and the energy to develop. And then you have Embiid come back in and it just throws the whole thing into disarray. And like, it would be one thing if you felt like you could rely on, all right, we're going to let Joel have a few games where he really struggles from the field because we're ramping him back up into being able to play 8 out of 10 games. Except that's not what you're getting. I mean, like, would anybody be surprised if come later tonight or tomorrow, we end up hearing, oh, well, you know what? Joel Embiid played 30 minutes the other night. And so he will not play on Friday against Indiana. And Sunday at Atlanta is kind of a question mark. And, maybe we're going to look at the 19th against the Knicks at Madison Square Garden. Like, would anybody be surprised? I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be disappointed, but I wouldn't be surprised. And like, if he plays against Indiana on Friday, do we then just automatically rule out that game on Sunday against the Hawks? Like, is playing 2 games in 3 nights, is that too much to ask? Because apparently to this point it has been. I just find it deeply upsetting and worrisome and problematic. It's kind of wild though. If you look at the Sixers schedule so far this year, what did I say? The Sixers are 13-10. They played 23 games, and in all but 1, 2, 3 of those games, Tyrese Maxey has had the most points among all Sixers players. Embiid's not even on one of those games. Oubre had a 29-point performance in a game. Edwards had 22 to lead all scorers against the Celtics in mid-November. And then Grimes had 22 points against the Bucks on the 5th. I would like to be really positive about Joel Embiid, and I'd love to be positive and say, like, hey, this team has a whole other level they can reach. Right now, based on what I'm seeing out of Joel Embiid, like I think he right now looks like a cement block that's been attached to the Sixers as they're trying to stay above water. He's like a cement block that's been tied to their feet, and hopefully they don't get dragged under the water. But it kind of feels like that's where they're at right now. All right, I'm going to go out to the comments here, and then we're going to talk about the Fly guys real quick. Ford says, sucked seeing the Lakers win. Hate the Lakers, hate LeBron. Used to like Luka, but now he's a Laker. I still like Luka Doncic a lot. Chris Reed says, Sixers remain a better team without Embiid than with him. Fight me. I don't think you're not going to get a lot of debate there. Ford thinks that Embiid should retire. Seriously. Landro says they have to figure out how to use Embiid as a complementary piece. They can't run the offense through him. The problem is they're not going to. I don't even know how you could try to run Joel Embiid as a complementary piece. He is so unbelievably slow at this point. He doesn't fit this, like, they're not always like a high octane offense, but a lot of times they are. In half court sets, which you really rely on for playoff success, like that's where Embiid is supposed to thrive. But at this point, he doesn't look good. The shot selection, I think, is another just worrisome piece of all of this. AJ asks, do you feel like Embiid's presence is going to waste prime years of Maxi's career? No, because I think the Sixers, I mentioned this like a week or so ago. Ramona Shelburne put out a thing about how this offseason the Sixers decided Maxey is the franchise, Maxey is the guy. And so as long as the Sixers are committed to this idea that Maxey is 100% the guy, the franchise, the cornerstone, they're not going to put him in a position where Joel Embiid is getting more focus and attention at Maxey's expense. I don't know what the breaking point is going to be. I'm not saying that a trade is going to happen because I have no idea how you would even figure out a way to make a trade of that hideous extension that the Sixers gave to Embiid way too early for no good reason. But man, I'm not saying they would send Joel Embiid home and say, you're just not going to play. We'll pay you, just don't play. But if he looks like this and Maxey is on this like superstardom track, I don't know what they're going to do. I just don't know how you make him a complimentary player. I'm not sure that he can be. Jim Cochran says, very sad how Embiid's career has gone very Lindros-esque. I think it's a real shame. I used to joke that like if you wanted to see something really, really sad, go back and watch rookie year Joel Embiid. Like if you want to feel bad about yourself and your life, go back right now and watch rookie or second year Joel Embiid highlights, running up and down the floor like a giraffe or like a gazelle. He was just so great. He was such a big dude, but he was so graceful. It looked like he would take 3 strides and he's at the other free throw line. It was incredible. And then the knee issues, and you had the orbital bone fractures, and you had the Bell's palsy and the back issue that he came into the league with, and the navicular bone break. I feel bad for this guy. On a human level, I feel bad for Joel Embiid that like his body has just given out on him way too many times. And so on the human level, I feel bad. And I get it. You go, he's made millions of dollars. How do you feel bad? You still have to live in that body, man. Like, I assume Joel Embiid wakes up every day in some kind of pain. No one wants to wake up in pain. I would be willing to bet that if he doesn't wake up every day in pain, he will spend most of the year, like a majority of the years of his life, obviously post-career, waking up in a lot of pain. And I don't wish that on anybody. And at the same time, you just go, man, this really just sucks. It sucks to watch. And you hope that they don't squander Tyrese Maxey's best years. But it's going to be really hard for them to improve the team around Maxey if Embiid doesn't retire or if Embiid doesn't figure out a way to physically get better. I will continue to root for Joel Embiid on a human level. I'll continue to root for him in the, like, if he can be 80% of what he was at his peak powers, the Sixers team is a really dangerous one. But man, there's been nothing so far to like make you feel like that's the case this year. Okay, now, I'm trying to figure this out. So Vic Death, I think, must be behind and saying, Krampus, don't you mean Krampus? Yeah, but I'm not going to say Krampus every time. Yeah. Casual Warzone guy says it's their own fault. He had an injury history before they extended him. They should have traded him the second he won MVP. I don't agree with that latter part. But yeah, the injury history was well known. I don't actually know why they did the extension. Okay. Let's get back to positivity. Okay. We delved into the negativity a little bit too long. Let's get a little bit positive here. Okay. We have good vibes. Everything's fine. We're going to have good vibes because tonight the Eagles play on Monday Night Football. But before we get there, I want to talk to you a little bit. I want to have a conversation with Flyers fans out there. Is that okay? I want to have a conversation. Okay. So we got a little bit of good news today. Has nothing to do with the actual Flyers team yet. It has something to do with somebody in the prospect pipeline, which I find very exciting. And you should all find very exciting if you're a Flyers fan. And by the way, if you're not a Flyers fan at this point, right? If you're a Philadelphia sports fan and you're looking for a reason to like maybe get in on the Flyers, it's not the fact that like they've had a pretty good season, all things considered. It's Porter Martone. So Porter Martone today was officially named to the Canadian junior national team's preliminary roster for World Junior Championships. Now, this was a foregone conclusion. He has looked like one of, if not the best player in all of college hockey this season. I have had so many conversations with people that I highly respect that are either front office people or media types or people who have played in the league. And every time Porter Martone's name comes up, they all light up. They light up in the same way that like a lot of fans' faces light up. You say, hey, Porter Martone, you see the most recent thing? See that goal? And the way that people light up, that's how all of these highly respected people that have either played in the league or worked in the league, that's how they light up when the name Porter Martone comes up. I had somebody of high importance say to me the other night, he looks like a stud. And I went, indeed, he does. I said, that's my word. You can't say stud. That's my thing. He looks like a stud. So Martone is going to go to World Junior. We expect Jetlachenko will also be at World Junior, also playing for Team Canada. Would be nice to see the two of them together on the ice. Be very cool. But man, when you're looking at just from a macro view, this Flyers team as they've currently put this season together and what is in the pipeline, Martone is like a potential game changer. And I've had a few people that have said something to the extent of Martone looks like he's going to be a long-term top line wing and like one who makes it very difficult for you to even like move him down to the second line. Like he is a guy who is a cornerstone kind of player, which is really, really exciting. I see Casual Warzone guy says Martone, Mishkov, Zegras top line next year is going to be fun. That won't happen, but maybe in a short look, who knows? Yerk says Jet was named as well. Not surprised. Fully expected that. And he's been about a point per game player since he went to Brantford. And he was above a point per game player with Guelph this season, although he had that one like 5 or 6 point night that skewed those numbers a little bit. But like, there you go. Like, again, I never know what to make of Jetlachenko. And I don't want to shit on the guy because he's young. And like, I want to believe that there's some development to be done and that like he's going to be an NHL player. I just want him to be more than a bottom 6 guy. I don't expect Jetlachenko to become a 1C. Would it be great for him to develop into like a really strong 2C? It'd be awesome. I would love to be wrong, right? I'm just not totally sure yet. The vision is there. The playmaking appears to be there. The speed is certainly there. I'll be interested to see like what McKee works, how much McKee works with him on this need to put pucks on net. If Lachenko can figure out a way to become a goal scorer for his team, for Brantford, well, then all of a sudden his ceiling increases exponentially when he gets a look at the NHL, which could even be at the end of the season. Let's see. Now, some other people in the comments are kind of going to where I wanted to go to next. Okay. The number one thing that came out of Friday's show, I mean, it was an insane amount of people that interacted with clips and reels and short form stuff on TikTok, especially Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I mean, there were a lot of people who had a lot of thoughts about what Colby Cohen said on Friday's show about Quinn Hughes. And he also mentioned Brady Tkachuk, which that clip did some pretty nice numbers on Instagram, especially. But like, we're going to take the Tkachuk part out of it. I want to talk to you about Quinn Hughes for a second, okay? So I did a little bit of digging this weekend because I live in this very weird world, right? Where like, this is not my job. The microphone thing is not my job. And the flyer stuff that I do is not my job. It's like a fun thing to do, and I enjoy doing it, but it's not my job. It's not what pays the bills. So I'm in this really weird position where I have good access with the Flyers. I do. If I want to go talk to players in the locker room, I have the access to go do it. If I want to talk to a coach, I can talk to a coach. If I want to talk to the front office, I can talk to the front office. If I want to go find some random jamoke, I can go find that person and talk to them. And I try not to. Oddly enough, I like the idea of being relatively removed from the thought process of the organization itself and look at things with a very fresh, very clear perspective. If you, like, for example, if you talk to a scout who advocated for a specific player to be drafted, and that player now stinks, that scout might still try to tell you that, like, oh, he's just not being utilized correctly. And then in your analysis of that player, you have now been influenced by this person who's not willing to give up on the player that you probably should give up on. So like, I try not to do a ton of that. But I did do a little bit of asking around, just a little bit. Did some asking around, talked to some different people from different sectors and some people from different pieces of the puzzle. And I was like, okay, let's have a conversation about like trade targets. And I asked about Rasmus Dahlin. I had one person say to me, we would certainly be interested in Rasmus Dahlin, but to this point, Buffalo has not made him available. I said, okay, good to know. Good to know. I tend to like Rasmus Dahlin. I think that if Rasmus Dahlin goes on a team that has some better infrastructure and maybe is a team that finds the win column more consistently, I think Dahlin could be a legitimate number one defenseman on a really good team. I think that if he were to be made available, the Flyers should absolutely put together a package of some sort, contact Buffalo, and try to get a deal done. I've said that pretty consistently, but it's interesting to me. Dahlin's name has been mentioned in the ether by some national media pundits, but asking around, it sounded like not so much yet. Okay. The Owen Tippett rumor came up. So I asked around. Owen Tippett, has his name been bantied about? Well, of course, there are teams that are interested in Owen Tippett. There are people interested in Cam York. There are people that are interested in Jamie Drysdale. There are people that are interested in name any of the Flyers' top prospects. If you want that to be a Martone or a Bonk or a Barkey or a Bump, there are teams that are like actively monitoring all of those prospects. There are teams that are cognizant of the picks that the Flyers have available to them. So then I decided at one point in poking around and talking to a few people, all right, is there any truth to the Quinn Hughes thing, right? Because like, I feel like for the most part, the Quinn Hughes thing has been kind of like this pie in the sky idea. Now, I've outlined on this show and on Snow the Goalie, I've outlined how I think it makes sense. I have outlined how I think we can get to a place where the Flyers have enough assets that if they really, really wanted to, they could go out and make a very attractive pitch to Vancouver for Quinn Hughes, right? Here's what I have gathered so far. When a team has a player of like the Quinn Hughes level, they take a few things into account. One, how much length is left on the contract? If Vancouver were to deal Quinn Hughes right now, the acquiring team would be getting him for the rest of this year, which is still 40-ish games, somewhere around 40 games, right? No, more than that. 50? Is it 50-ish? Flyers just wrapped up the game 27th game or so, right? So you're somewhere around 50 games left. So you're getting around 45, 50 games this season, and then a full season next year, and then he hits free agency in 2027. Well, if you just think about when is a player the most valuable, being under contract is really the thing that's the most important. Now, could Vancouver have gone into this past draft and been like, yeah, listen, we don't think Quinn Hughes is going to re-sign here. Let's have a conversation. Let's field as many offers as we can, make a deal at the draft. They could have. They chose not to. They could have done it again at the beginning of the season. They chose not to. Obviously, there are teams that are checking in around the clock around Quinn Hughes. Is he actually going to be available? Is it possible that Quinn Hughes is dealt before the calendar flips to 2026? I say no. Is it possible he's dealt in February during the Olympic break? I say no. Could there be a scenario where Quinn Hughes is dealt before the trade deadline? Maybe. The thing that I'm always interested in is the value of a player is going to be at this all-time high right now because it's almost like having him under contract for 2 years. And yes, there are a lot of teams interested. And you would assume that if the player were made widely available, there would be a bidding war. The trade deadline feels like the time where teams are going to come in with their best and final offers because they want to have that player for the stretch run, for the playoffs, and then for the entire next season. Here's the problem, right? If you look at historical precedent of what a number one defenseman or a star player ends up getting dealt for, more often than not, the return is far below what people expect it to be. And at the same time, you have to be aware that like the asking price right now is probably absurd. I had a couple of people weigh in and say, this is what historical precedent would kind of tell us is the offer that you need to make. And so the idea has been kind of floated out there. I remember last week I said, would you trade Matvei Mishkov for Quinn Hughes, 1-for-1. Because keep in mind, you can't go out and acquire Quinn Hughes right now and try to work on an extension. It is forbidden by the league. Even if the Flyers wanted to work out an extension with Quinn Hughes, they could not do it right now. I think you'd have to wait until next July. They can't do it right now. So if you acquire a Quinn Hughes, whether you're the Flyers, the Devils, whomever, you can't negotiate that contract in good faith and have something signed, sealed, delivered. So you're assuming a lot of risk, right? If the Flyers were to say, yeah, we want to go all in, we want to sell Quinn Hughes on what it is to be a Flyer, what it is to be a Flyer here with his friend Trevor Zegras and some other guys and this coach that he really liked and Rick Tocchet, and we want to have a year and a half to sell him on it so that when that time comes to negotiate a contract, we feel very good about the likelihood of him signing on the dotted line and being a Philadelphia Flyer for a long period of time between the acquisition time to that next contract. You're talking about almost a decade, right? And I think the Flyers actually do feel good about that. From what I have gathered, the Flyers feel like if any player gets acquired, it could be Quinn Hughes, it could be Rasmus Dahlin, it could be insert the name of your favorite forward that you've had your eyes on for years. The Flyers are very much of the belief that if they get a guy into town and that guy gets to experience what it's like to play in Philadelphia, to be with these facilities, these players, these coaches, they are very much of the belief that a guy will come here and want to re-sign. In the case of Quinn Hughes, you're also very close to your brothers who both play for New Jersey. You're very close. You're not on the same team, but you're close. And maybe that's a selling point. Everyone I've talked to is of the belief that Quinn Hughes wants to come back east. Likes Vancouver just fine. Not a single soul I've talked to says, yeah, I still think there's a really high chance he stays in Vancouver. It feels like almost everyone I have spoken with at various levels and in various sectors of the hockey world, they all seem to believe he's going to ultimately want to end up on the East Coast, whether that's with the Devils, the Flyers, whoever. He'll want to be on the East Coast. Okay. So let's get back to the price, right? So you would think that by the time a deal gets made, say at the trade deadline, if you're the Flyers, you have to kind of do the calculus, right? We know for a fact that Vancouver has been interested in players like an Owen Tippett. So then you look at guys who are at the level of an Owen Tippett, maybe a little bit better, a little bit worse, right? So you would think that it's possible that a guy like Owen Tippett or maybe a Cam York would have to be involved in a trade. So there's a roster player. You would assume that there's at least one draft pick, probably a first-round pick. All right, so you've got a roster player and a pick. Then you go, all right, a prospect has to be involved. It has to be a really good one. Are you going to move Porter Martone? I would not. But are you going to move a Porter Martone? Imagine if right now you're building this package. You've got Owen Tippett, or if Martone's included, then call it Cam York, a first-round pick, and Porter Martone. That's 3. And even at the trade deadline, that would feel like a lot. But because Vancouver's in a position where they're looking at it as almost 2 full seasons of having Quinn Hughes, I think that there's a good chance they'd want even more. So now not only are you talking about a roster player, not only are you talking about a first-round pick, not only are you talking about an elite prospect like a Porter Martone, they might even want another one of your prospects. Do you want to trade a Porter Martone and an Alex Bump along with a Cam York and a first-round pick and maybe a second-round pick or a conditional? You're talking about 4 or 5 assets. Do you want to do that right now? I don't. I think that's insane, right? If it's me, that's crazy. To me, I would not trade Porter Martone. If you could get a 1-for-1 trade of Mishkov for Quinn Hughes, I would still be very sick in the stomach to get rid of an elite talent and a guy that we all want to believe is going to be an elite talent in Matvei Michkov. But it fixes that number 1 defenseman hole that you have no conceivable path to fixing right now, unless Dahlin becomes available for less. That maybe that's your safety valve. I'm not saying I actively would want to trade Michkov, but if my choices were like a York, a first-round pick, a Martone, and another prospect, and maybe another pick, or just Michkov, well then, Matvei, das vidanya. I wouldn't love it, but I would understand. If Vancouver came to you and said, Porter Martone for Quinn Hughes, I'd be like, well, I hate getting rid of Porter Martone, but in a 1-for-1 where you get your number 1 deal, okay. But that's not going to happen. So all this is to say, just from some conversations and just from some looking back at historical precedents and talking to people about what the prices on players are in the beginning of the year or at this point in the year versus the trade deadline versus the upcoming draft versus going into the final season of a contract, I would not be surprised if Vancouver wants 4 or 5 assets, including at least one of your elite prospects in a Martone, at least one of your pretty good young players. If it's a York, could it be a guy like a Tippett? And then at least 1 or 2 high picks. Now, you might feel like that's a totally worthwhile thing. I'm not sure that I would go there. I think that seems like a hell of a lot. And if waiting until closer to the trade deadline means that, all right, the price doesn't drop to like Owen Tippett and a conditional first-round pick, but if it drops to like 3 assets instead of 5, well, I could live with that for the idea of having Quinn Hughes for an end of a regular season, a potential playoff run, and then all of next year to try to sell him on trying to be a Philadelphia Flyer. You could get me at that point to say, yeah, you know what? Like, would I trade a Tippett, a first-round pick, or maybe a Tippett 2 firsts and like a Denver Barkey? Yeah, I would do that. But even looking at that on the surface, right, that's not enough. Even at the trade deadline, that's not enough. 2 first-round picks sound great. First-round picks can be a crapshoot. Owen Tippett. The way that I feel frustrated with Owen Tippett not being a consistent goal scorer, you think there's a team that's going to want to trade their number 1 franchise defenseman for a guy that like maybe is a 30-goal scorer and very streaky? I don't think so. Denver Barkey's a nice player. Are their GMs salivating right now at the idea of going out and getting Denver Barkey in a trade for their number 1 defenseman, franchise, cornerstone Quinn Hughes? I'm not so sure. I said this with Colby Cohen on Friday, and I feel even more of this belief today. If you're going to make a trade for a guy at the level of a Quinn Hughes, it's going to hurt. You are going to have to make a painful decision no matter what. The only way for you to not have to make that painful decision would be for Quinn Hughes to come out and say publicly, I will not be re-signing with Vancouver in 2027. And I cannot imagine that's the case. Cannot imagine that Quinn Hughes would do it. Now, Landris does have a good point here. Vancouver really did seem to like Jack Nesbitt going into the draft. Would you trade a Cam York, a Jack Nesbitt, and 2 firsts for a Quinn Hughes? I like Jack Nesbitt. I think Jack Nesbitt's going to be a really good player. I wouldn't like to move him. Cam York, I've been very hot and cold on. 2 firsts. I don't know. Would I make that deal? Amadeo here says, and Lutsenko. I mean, Jesus, can you imagine, just imagine hypothetically, like if Vancouver looks at you and says, hey, we want Cam York, Jet Lutsenko, Porter Martone, and 2 first-round picks, and a Denver Barkey. Let's go 6 assets right now. There's not a chance on earth you make that deal. But if you're wondering to yourself, why haven't the Flyers or the Devils or any other team right now laid an offer on the table that's been disseminated to all of the national media pundits? This is probably why. Because it's going to take a lot at this point in the season. When you get closer to the trade deadline, if Quinn Hughes maybe doesn't go public, but maybe privately says, listen, guys, I've loved my time in Vancouver, but I do want you to know that more likely than not, I'm going to probably leave in the summer of 27. If he goes to the Vancouver management and says that before the trade deadline, maybe that price does come down a little bit. Maybe it comes down to being 3 of those assets. I do think that no matter what, if you make a trade, it's going to hurt. Something is going to have to move that you're not going to be thrilled with. There is no scenario here where I see the Flyers execute a trade for Quinn Hughes and all that Vancouver gets back is Owen Tippett, Oliver Bonk, and a first-round pick. If I'm wrong and that ends up being the exact trade in like March or whatever, Amadeo can clip this thing up and I can look like a total moron because, boy, the Flyers will have fleeced Vancouver. I just don't see it. So anyway, I know a lot of people have been very excited about Quinn Hughes. And so in my mind, I was like, I got to do a little bit of poking around. I got to do a little bit of asking around. I try not to, but I try to do a little bit of poking around, a little bit of asking around, and try to get the historical precedent. To me is the more important part of this. This is where like you talk to people who used to be in that decision maker's chair back in the day. And there's the public perception of what a trade looks like right now versus the deadline versus the offseason. So I thought it was very important to got to get a holistic view here. So I think that no matter what, if I were to put money on it right now, I would say Quinn Hughes will not be a Vancouver Canuck to start the 2027-28 season. I'm not even convinced he'll be one to start the 26-27 season. I think there's a decent chance here Quinn Hughes will be dealt by the trade deadline this year or at the draft in the summer of 26. I think that the writing is kind of already on the wall. I could be wrong. You guys can let me know. Now, I have seen this as well from Jamie Rollo. This was going around Twitter as well. Look at the Eichel trade as a blueprint. All of that, of those assets, they're all like, it is a perfectly fair thing to point to that past precedent. But I will note that that trade looks worse now. And I'll also point out that at the time, Eichel was traded because of a disagreement between himself, his camp, and the Buffalo Sabres about a disc replacement surgery in his neck. And so I think no matter what, that was going to also hurt his trade value. So I don't think it's totally fair to look at what Buffalo ultimately got in that deal and say that that is an exact comp to what a Quinn Hughes trade would get for Vancouver. I don't think that's totally fair. Anyway, I will be back. I might come back on Tuesday to react to the Eagles game, or for sure we'll be back on Wednesday. But do me a favor if you haven't done so already. Like the video, share the video, subscribe. I will tell you, today I was at the bank. And as I got done at the bank, I'm going to walk out. And this lovely guy comes up to me and he hands me his card. We shake hands. He says, I love the shows. I watch both shows. I was like, that's very nice. Very kind. And that has been happening more and more, which means that a whole bunch of you who are in the comments section at any given time, right? I forgot to bring the comments back up. Those of you who are in the comments section, who I love and appreciate tremendously, who are the vocal people in the comments section, you are wonderful people. But there is also a very large segment of human beings who are actively consuming this show without dropping in the comments, without maybe leaving a 5-star rating or review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but they're there. They are this like silent majority of the listenership. I'll also point out, there was a nice lady that I met at a Christmas party this weekend who was the coworker of the host's wife. And she was like, I watch Know the Goalie every time you have an episode. And the husband's like, she lets me know when a new episode drops every time. So I thank those people as well. This has been a big year. It's been a big year of growth. And so hopefully we'll cap off the year of 2025 with a nice little push here. We're at like just under, I think we're somewhere between 1,700 and 1,800 subscribers on the YouTube channel. I think we were about 500 this time last year. So it's been a nice year of growth. Would I love to get to 2,000 subscribers on YouTube between now and the end of the year? I would. So here's what you could do to help. Like the video, share the video, subscribe, ring the bell to get notified whenever we go live with the show. But like find 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 of your friends or family members who are just so sick and tired of the ridiculous hot takes on radio all the time, or who are sick of listening to the same nonsense about what would Tanner McKee look like as the quarterback of this offense 5 days a week. And, maybe convert them to the Russ Joy Show 3 times a week or 1 time a week or 2 times a week. Who knows? If you see the content going around TikTok, Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, YouTube Shorts, hit those with a like as well. All right. I will be back. I'll be better as well, but I'll be back either Tuesday with a post-game show or Wednesday for sure. We have Snow the Goalie Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday and Saturday this week. We have a press row show Tuesday night. We have Snow the Goalie Radio at the Chickies and Pete's on Roosevelt Boulevard in the Northeast on Wednesday night. We have another press row show on Thursday and another press row show on Saturday. So you're going to have a lot of me in your feed if you follow the Russ Joy Show and Snow the Goalie. But again, I'll be back to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles Monday Night Football performance. We'll see how they do. Hopefully, we get a nice week of little to no questions around the offense. Nick Sirianni reportedly has been more involved in planning out the offensive game plan for this evening's game. Hopefully, it will bear fruit. We will find out soon, my friends. So, I'll talk to you very soon here on the Russ Joy Show. Until then, I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Have a great day, everybody. I'll talk to each and every one of you very, very soon.